Hello everyone, back to today's second video. We're going to do the GWV Sunday Round Up for today's second video. So as well as Sunday, we've got your eclectic mix of this and that. We're going to be looking at things like sea surface temperature anomalies, what's happening with ENSO, solar activity, Arctic oscillation, North Atlantic oscillation, and of course the weather for the next week to 10 days as well. So sit back and enjoy the GWV Sunday Round Up for your Sunday afternoon viewing pleasure. Earlier on today, we released the fourth summer 2019 analogues update. That one's looking at March CET data. Quite an interesting watch. The video is just here on the homepage, and later on today will be placed on the summer updates, the forecast page, with an extensive written summary going over everything that we discuss in the video. So have a look at that when you've done with this one. Right, so we'll start off with the Sunday Roundup then, and we're going to begin with sea surface temperature anomalies today. So this is how the sea surface temperature anomalies were looking across the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. When we did last week's Sunday Round, we've got three areas of interest in particular. We've got the ENSO region just there. We've got the Northern Pacific up here, and we've got the North Atlantic over there, of course. So that's how the sea surface temperature anomalies were looking last week. This is the very latest with those sea surface temperature anomalies. Let's deal with the ENSO region first of all. So again, going back to last week, that's how things were looking last week. This is how things are looking now. Very little change in the ENSO region. Everything looking quite stable there. We've got a weak signature for El Nino continuing. The cold and average sea surface temperature anomalies that developed just off the coast of Peru, they're still there, but they are diminishing. Certainly not an indication for La Nina at this stage. Basically, we're just in weak El Nino condition, and it looks like we're going to be staying around that level for the time being. So no change really over the past week in the ENSO region. Going further north, everything looking quite stable up there in the Northern Pacific. So, got this colder area just here. It is a bit colder in the northeastern Pacific, but as I say, very little change there. That's basically stable compared to last week. In the North Atlantic, again, things looking really quite stable. That situation in the North Atlantic last week. This is the situation now. So we've still got that colder than average area of sea surface temperature anomalies to the south of Greenland. One change is that the tropical Atlantic appears to be warming a bit. Looks like things are getting warmer again through the tropical Atlantic. So that's a bit of a change on last week. I think temperatures have lifted up there a little bit through the tropical Atlantic, but overall things quite stable in both the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans at the moment. Very little change from last week. We'll be keeping a very close eye on the oceans, of course, over the next few weeks and months. Solar Oscillation Index looks like this. Is from the Bureau of Meteorology in Australia. So Solar Oscillation Index is an index that's reflecting the atmospheric state in the southern Pacific Ocean. It's measuring the air pressures between Darwin in northern Australia and Tahiti in the Southern Ocean. When the SOI is negative, then the atmospheric setup is going to be indicative of El Nino. So a negative SOI is something that you get when you're in an El Nino event. A positive SOI is something that you get when you're in a La Nina, in a cold event. So the positive SOI will be an atmospheric state that is reflective of La Nina. So what we're state we're in at the moment is that we're negative with the SOI. So we come down here and we see these negative numbers that we've got there with the date. So for example, we've got the 21st of March coming out at minus 5.84, and then we've got the 25th of March coming out at minus 3.16. 28th of March comes out at minus 9.10. Last day of March, 31st of March, of course Australia ahead of the UK, comes out at minus 8.47. So we're still in the negative phase of the SOI. This tells us that El Nino continues, but it is quite a weak negative SOI phase now. So we're not particularly negative, we're just on the negative side with the SOI, if you like. So that's kind of numbers. Those kind of numbers that you're going to get when you're in a relatively weak El Nino, and that's that situation now. Of course, in February we did get some extreme negativity of the SOI. Some days we're going down to -20, -30, -40, I think, even on the odd day back in February. We saw a crash in the SOI, and that saw a rapid strengthening of El Nino during February. But during March, that has backed off a lot. The SOI is just slightly in its negative phase, and El Nino is back to just being a very, very weak event. We wait and see where we're going to go with El Nino over the next few weeks and months. This is how the Siberian and Eurasian snow cover is looking. This is from the National Ice Centre, part of NOAA. So we're just beginning to pull the snow cover back from Western Russia now. So that, of course, is the border between Russia and Europe, just there. Last week, the whole of Russia, even to western border, was covered with snow. But you can see it's just beginning to pull back now, that snow line, just starting to pull back from the far west of Russia. Nevertheless, most parts of Russia are still covered with snow. And we've still got quite a bit of snow across Scandinavia, actually. Very little sign of thawing there across central and northern parts of Scandinavia. Anyway, down across southern Sweden and into Denmark, we have got rid of snow there. But across most parts of Scandinavia, looks like we're still snow covered. And again, most parts of Russia away from the extreme west still covered. Of course, in Europe, very little snow left now, except over mountainous areas such as the Alps and the Pyrenees. May see a little bit of snow on these maps turning up across the UK in the next few days. There will be a little bit of snow across northern parts of the country. More on that very shortly. Solar activity, the solar disk on our side of this today from solarham.net, looking like this. So we are spotless again, no sunspots whatsoever on our side of the solar disk. Therefore, solar activity is at very low levels, and SolarHam is reporting that solar activity will remain at very low levels for the next 3 days as well. Well and truly into solar minimum type conditions. This is regards to this Sunday Round Up solar activity tracker, updated to yesterday, 30th of March, sent through by our good friend James Ackroyd. Big thank you to James for sending this through, of course. So last week we had that tick up in solar activity. The orange line is depicting each individual day's sunspot activity. Look at that, we ticked up the solar activity last week. Actually had the most number of sunspots going right way back to last summer, that tick up just there. So we did see quite a big tick up actually in solar activity, albeit at a minimal level because we are at solar minimum, but we did see quite a big tick up in solar activity last week. But as expected, since then we have seen solar activity dying back a lot. So now the orange line is down here, it's flat line, it's on the floor of the chart once again. Not yet enough spotless days to start moving down our trend lines, which are the thick green and thick red lines. They've stopped rising, they're sort of flatlining at that level, and I think within the next few days we will see those trend lines beginning to move downwards once again. We're at solar minimum. We're going to be staying at solar minimum for the next few months, certainly. So, again, we look at this because there is a connection between low levels of solar activity and an increased risk of northern blocking, particularly in the winter and particularly affecting sort of the Atlantic and northern Europe. I think it's a little bit less convincing for other parts of the northern hemisphere, that connection, but there is a connection between low levels of solar activity and an increased risk of northern blocking, particularly when you're around and particularly coming out of solar minimum, actually. So it's always the first couple of winters after solar minimum, kind of like the first couple of winters of a new solar cycle, have the greatest chance of being cold and blocked. So there's no guarantee as we know from this winter just gone, despite the low levels of solar activity, we had a mild winter. So every winter is unique unto itself. Each individual winter will have its own unique sort of drivers about it. So kind of like loading the dice a bit in favour of a colder and more block type winter when you're around solar minimum, but it certainly doesn't guarantee that you will get blocking and colder conditions. Big thank you to James sending through the GWV Sunday Round Up Solar Activity Tracker. We'll be keeping a close eye on this over the next few weeks with GWV Sunday Round Up, of course. And we've got Solar Sunday coming up on Easter Sunday. I think that's only 3 weeks away now, so that's going to be an interesting watch, Solar Sunday on Easter Sunday. Right, Arctic oscillation is looking like this. So the AO observed and forecast chart is telling us where we have been with the Arctic oscillation via this black line and the red lines at the end, where the GFS ensembles are forecasting the Arctic oscillation to go. So back over in winter, we go all the way back to 1st of February with this. Back through the early part of the winter, 1st of December, I should say. Back in the winter, the early part of winter, we had negative Arctic oscillation conditions just into the beginning of February, 1st of February, negative AO. But then through February, we see that the Arctic oscillation trends positive. So we've been in the positive phase of the Arctic oscillation since early February. You can see that quite clearly with this black line being up here. We are still very positive with the Arctic oscillation right now, but the GFS ensembles are forecasting that we're going to go back to negative Arctic oscillation conditions again. So it's downhill all the way, really, from where we are right now. Downhill all the way to the beginning of April, when we're around neutral with the Arctic oscillation. And beyond that, we go into a negative phase through the first half of April with the Arctic oscillation. Remember, this is an index that's reflecting the atmospheric state, same as with the Southern Oscillation Index. That's reflecting the atmospheric state in the Southern Pacific Ocean. This one is reflecting the atmospheric state in the Arctic. None of these indexes are driving anything. They're just telling you what the atmospheric state is. It's the atmosphere that is driving the index, not the other way round. So when the Arctic oscillation is negative, it's going to be negative. You're going to have high pressure blocking in the northern latitudes, usually up over the North Pole. Blocking is a route of pushing cold air out of the pole and down into mid-latitudes, at least in the winter. Not quite as straightforward as that in the summer. So this is telling us that we're going to have high pressure returning to the mid-latitude, to the northern latitudes, I should say. High pressure will be coming back to the Arctic, and that's going to send the Arctic oscillation negative. Now, it looks like the North Atlantic oscillation could be showing signs of being on the move for the first time in many, many months. So again, this is the NAO observed and forecast chart. The black line tells where we've been. With the NAO, the red lines at the end, where the GFS ensembles are forecasting the NAO to go. We've been in an extreme positive phase of the North Atlantic oscillation, going right way back to the start of the winter. That's 1st of December just there, positive with the NAO. You have to go right way back to the autumn to find the last time that the NAO was in extended sort of negative phase. I think October, November, we had a bit of an extended phase of a negative NAO. But since then, we've basically been positive all the way. It did go negative for a few days around New Year, 1st of January just there. And of course, the odd day dips down into negative territory or goes sort of on the negative side of neutral, but not sustained. And actually over the past few weeks, certainly since the beginning of March, the NAO has been trending even more positive. So I've been in an extremely positive phase of the NAO through much of March, and that's where we are right now, still very positive as well. The GFS ensembles, these red lines, are showing that we're going to stay positive with the NAO, certainly through the first week of April, but there are just a few signs here now that as we get through to the second week of April, and that is within the unreliable time frame of the GFS and its ensemble, by the way, so this is all a little bit unreliable, and is sort of prone to change. don't assume this is exactly how things are going to go. But it is showing that we may be seeing signs through the second week of April that the NAO might start to trend negative. If that happens, then that will be quite a fundamental change of the overall North Atlantic pattern that we've had through the past few months. When the NAO is positive, then you've got low pressure around Iceland and high pressure strengthened through the Azores. You would typically strengthen the westerly flow, but it doesn't necessarily mean it'll be wet, because you might, as we have, strengthened the Azores high to such a degree that you actually build up a lot of high pressure across much of Europe from that extension from the Azores high. That's what's been going on over the past couple of weeks. Now, when the NAO is negative, you will get high pressure developing around Iceland and low pressure through the Azores. And if you combine that with a negative Arctic oscillation as well, then this is a signal at this time of year will usually be a signal for quite cold and quite unsettled conditions. As I say, this is very much in the unreliable time frame of the GFS and its ensemble, so we have to wait and see how this plays out. We're keeping an eye on it in the next few days to see whether the GFS ensembles continue to show this change to a negative NAO in the second week of April. But certainly a few hints there that the NAO, after being in a really prolonged positive phase, months and months of positivity of the NAO, it might be on the change. We'll keep you posted on that through the next few days. Right, so let's do some forecasting then. We're going to have a look at the GFS upper air temperature and precipitation ensembles next. So the red line here is a 30-year upper air temperature for Aberdeen. We're up in Scotland today. We're starting off pretty cold up there at the moment. Temperatures have taken a bit of a plunge. We're going to keep it fairly chilly really over the next few days as well, generally trending a little bit under the red line as we're going through the first few days of April. But as we get further on into April, there is a trend here to start to turn things a little bit milder. So I think as we get through to the second week of April, we may well find temperatures beginning to lift up a little bit. Also looks more unsettled through the first days of April as well, so quite a bit of dry weather for the next couple of days, but then increasingly next week it looks like it's turning more unsettled. Showers or longer spells of rain. And as the air is going to be quite cold, there is going to be a risk of some snow as well in the north in the next few days, primarily over high ground, but maybe not exclusively so, because there's a few flakes coming down to lower levels. Through the second week of April, looks like got a bit of a drying trend, so possibly going back to something drier and milder through the second week of April, but we'll have to wait and see about that. Temperature anomalies are forecast to be below average. Haven't seen this for a little while, but the last couple of days these charts have shifted, and that's increased further overnight, so now looking quite substantially colder than average from the week from the 31st of March to the 8th of April. On the scale, it looks like we're sort of between 2 and 4 degrees below average, which is quite cold, really. It's been a long while since we've been that much below average. Probably have to go back to the last week or so of January, when we was substantially colder than average. So a pretty chilly week, to say the least, coming up, not just for the UK, but for many western parts of Europe as well. Precipitation anomalies also look a little bit more unsettled, generally close to average with precipitation, so nothing overly wet, but certainly it's a bit more unsettled compared to the very dry conditions that we've had just recently. So close to average with precipitation from the 31st of March to the 8th of April, but certainly colder than average. Over in America, bit of an east-west split. Many western parts of the states are warmer than average. Many eastern parts of the states are forecast to be colder than average in the week ahead. Precipitation-wise, a lot of variation from state to state. Generally, where it's cold in the east, it also looks pretty dry out in the west, and particularly in this northwestern, Pacific northwestern corner, it does look rather more unsettled there. Texas looking quite wet, interestingly. But down in the southwestern part of the state, so kind of like Nevada, some parts of California, New Mexico, those sort of areas, looks pretty dry just there, as you would expect, really, at this time of the year. Right, so this is how things are looking with the GFS midnight operational run for Wednesday. Low pressure's moving out into the North Sea. It's pulling down this cold northerly wind, so it'll be cold and showery on Wednesday. Heavy showers, if not longer spells of rain, and the air will be cold enough to produce snow, primarily over the high ground in the north, but not exclusively so. Some of those heavier showers, you might see some flakes coming down to low levels. And I think more generally hail, there'll be quite a bit of hail I would have thought, with these heavy April showers, probably cracks of thunder, a few flashes of lightning as well. That continues into Thursday with low pressure again off the east coast of Scotland. We're bringing a cold northerly wind, and there'll be further showers, and they could be wintry up in the north. Friday looks like it's threatening a new area of low pressure down to the southwest, so that could bring more persistent rain into southern parts of the country. Meanwhile, northern areas stay with this area of low pressure, keeping further wintry showers going. Into next weekend, we start to get rid of these areas of low pressure. They begin to slip away to the south. We start to build high pressure over Scandinavia, which begins to turn the winds into the east. Now, this easterly is not going to be a particularly cold one at this stage, so it looks like actually next weekend, although winds are turning into the east, temperatures will begin to lift up. And of course, on the east coast, it'll feel pretty cold and dismal there, with a lot of cloud being dragged in on those easterly winds. That's how things look as we get through to the following week. So this is Monday the 8th of April. Again, we're in this easterly wind. Pretty chilly, pretty grey and cheerly skies with that, I would have thought. Heading up towards day 10, so we keep high pressure to our north and northeast. Low pressure is out to the southwest. Again, it's not particularly cold. The air is actually originating from southern parts of Europe, so it's a relatively mild easterly that we've got here. But I would have thought dragging in a lot of cloud, particularly to eastern parts of the country, where it could be cold, misty and murky on that east coast. In the more extended range, we just keep this high pressure signal going to our north, so it begins to stretch out with its high pressure from Scandinavia all the way through to Iceland and Greenland. Again, it's not cold though. The air is being brought up from southern Europe, so despite what is actually northern blocking, and this would be enough to send both the AO and the NAO into negative territory, going back to what we were talking about a few minutes ago, that would be enough to send both of the indexes into negative territory. Despite that, the origins of the air, which you can see from the isobars really, is coming up from the south. So quite a mild wind direction, actually, despite the northern blocking. Right at the very end of the GFS run, we do start to build that high pressure over Greenland. And that starts to try, anyway, and pull down much colder air from the north. At the same time, we've got low pressure out to the southwest. So there would be a bit of battle going on there. You've got cold air surging down from the north, you've got warm air trying to push up from the south. There would be an active weather front in that sort of area, and you can get a lot of heavy rain at this time of year with this kind of scenario. There's a lot of energy in the atmosphere from that kind of battle situation. That's the kind of pattern that produced the Easter floods through the Midlands back in 1998. Northamptonshire, for example, was quite badly affected with that. Now, I'm not saying we're going to get floods with that at all this year. It's far too far away to have any certainty about it. It's over 2 weeks away, 16th of April. But it's sort of scenario that you can get at this time of the year, where you've got this temperature contrast. Of course, it's rapidly warming up across southern Europe, but it's still really cold, actually, in the northern latitudes. So when you get that kind of battle, there is a lot of energy available in the atmosphere. We should wait and see about that. It's over 2 weeks away, so almost certainly won't verify. GFS parallel run again. The winds in from the north on Wednesday with low pressure sitting to our east, so showers or longer spells of rain and cold enough for snow over high ground in the north, keeping it very showery through to the second half of the week. Next weekend, those low pressures start to slink away to the south. High pressure takes over across Scandinavia, turns the winds into the east. That's a little bit colder with that easterly wind next weekend and into the following week. I think the air is originating a little bit sort of north of the east with this one, so it is a bit colder than the operational GFS easterly, but not desperately cold, I have to say. That's how things look at day 10. High pressure again is blocking from Scandinavia towards Iceland and Greenland. Low pressures to our south, winds in from the east. Suffice to say, if this had happened in January, we would have been talking about very cold conditions and the chance of quite significant snow. But of course, it's the middle of April, so it's not going to be overly cold. We go into the extended range of the GFS parallel run. Again, we keep these easterly winds going from that Scandinavian high. Eventually, the high pressure sort of sinks down over the top of the UK, which would turn us drier and warmer. The air we've had is beginning to move up from southern parts of Europe at that point. So high pressure remains in control right to the middle of April with the GFS parallel run. But it is turning, it is gradually turning milder through the middle of April. ECMWF looks like this. The winds are in from the north again on Wednesday. Going to be cold and showery across most parts of the country. And that takes us through to next weekend, where high pressure is building over Scandinavia. Low pressure is beginning to slip away to the south of the country. And increasingly, this high pressure pulls in easterly winds next weekend as low pressure moves away to the south. We move up towards day 10. That's how we look. High pressure is dominating over to the east northeast of the country. Winds are in from the east. They're not particularly cold, easterlies, but certainly on the east coast anyway, they will be producing pretty chilly conditions. The whoops, that went a bit wrong. So let's have a look at the upper air temperatures with that ECM run at day 10. So I mean, it's chilly. It's not particularly cold. The -5 Celsius iceberg is in the North Sea. So it's quite chilly, particularly on the east coast. You will feel cold from that, but it's nowhere near as cold as if this had happened 2 or 3 months ago. So certainly we've got really good agreement for this high pressure be taking over across Scandinavia in around a week's time, and winds going into the east. Not uncommon, as I say, to get easterlies in April, particularly in May. There are 2 most easterly months. So almost guaranteed, but at some point through either April or May, often in both months, you're going to get a spell of easterly winds. And this is a classic example of that. Finally, just having a look at CFS V2. So these are the 500 millibar heights broken down into weekly periods. The first weekly period will take us from the 31st of March to the 6th of April. The coming week has low pressure below average heights extending through the UK. High pressure is in the middle of the North Atlantic. The jet stream is doing something like that. So it looks cold, showery and unsettled in the week ahead. But all change in week 2. We start to build up a big area of above average heights over Scandinavia, and low pressure gets pushed back into the middle of the Atlantic. That brings in easterly winds. If it had been January, those would have been bitterly cold easterly winds. As it's April, it's not going to be particularly cold. But it will be chilly, especially so on the east coast. Turning drier, of course, as this high pressure starts to block off the Atlantic Ocean once again. Scandinavian high, well and truly in control for week 3. This is the 14th to the 20th of April. Big area of high pressure over Scandinavia. Winds in from the east, so dry, probably chilly, and for the east coast anyway. But main things that go to dry conditions with those easterly winds. And I go through to week 4. Again, high pressure all the way, 21st, 27th of April. High pressure then is sitting just to the north of Scotland. So mainly dry conditions and probably turning warmer as well. Sun rapidly gaining strength and energy now. So by the time you get through to the end of April, if you're close to high pressure, even if it's sitting a little bit to the north, if you're close to high pressure with quite a bit of sunshine, temperatures at least by day are going to be respectively sort of warm. So this is right. It is shaping up to be really quite a dry April, despite the unsettled and showery start. This is how the CFS is forecasting April itself. So 700 millibar height anomaly shows this area of above average heights extending into the UK from the Atlantic and also building into Scandinavia as well. Low pressure is up there. So it looks very anticyclonic signal for April. Looks like we have a lot of dry weather, if this is right, even though we start on an unsettled and showery note. Temperature anomalies are forecast to be close to average. Most of Northern Europe is forecast to have a very mild April, quite a warm April. We're close to average. We may see these temperature anomalies lifting up a little bit over the next few days if this high pressure does gain the ascendancy as the model is showing. precipitation anomalies close to average. I would have thought quite a substantially drier than average month would be likely if high pressure is ridging from the Atlantic through the UK and going into northern Europe. So the signals are there for another dry month, I think, and probably quite a mild month again, maybe in quite a warm month as well, to add to all of the other dry and warm months that we've been having since last spring and summer. Finally, if you're enjoying the videos and the content at the moment, please can you consider becoming a patron for GWV. So visit GWV's Patreon page. We've got 61 patrons so far. Hello and a big thank you to all of GWV's patrons. If you'd like to become a patron for GWV, just come to GWV's Patreon page. We link to this on all of the pages at GWV's website and also in the description at YouTube. So you just come here, sign up for a Patreon account, and you can pledge an ongoing monthly donation to GWV. It can be anything from $1 a month, but it doesn't have to be a large amount of money. You sort of go in with all of the other patrons, get a shout out in the videos. We'll say big thank you for becoming a Gavs Weathervids patron. Alternatively, you can give a one-off donation via PayPal. So this is GWV's PayPal page. Again, we link to this on all pages at GWV's and also in the description at YouTube. So you just basically very simply just come to this page, sign into your PayPal account, and then you can pledge an ongoing, you pledge a one-off, I should say, donation to GWV's. And by doing that, you're helping us to pay for our content. You're helping us to keep the website online. So we're primarily ads funded and will be remaining so. There's no pressure about us going behind paywalls. We want to keep the videos completely free as you want them and as you need them and as you want to watch them. It just helps us with an extra revenue stream to pay for the website and keep the content going. So a big thank you to all of the patrons. Big thank you to all of the donors for GWV's. Big thanks to all of you. Right, that's it for today's Sunday Roundup. Hope you found it interesting and informative. Don't forget to check out the 4th Summer 2019 Analogues update. It's quite an interesting watch. That video is going to be placed on the Summer Updates and Forecast page with a written summary by this evening. But enjoy the rest of your Sunday afternoon, though. And that's all for now. Thanks for watching.